Hello, I am Jasmine Beltisar, and I will be talking about the Harlem Renaissance. Before I start off, I would like to talk about some background information. So during this time, there was a lot of migration of African Americans coming from the South to the North. Um, just like immigrants, they seeked opportunity in the North, specific, specifically in New York. Um, and in New York, there was this subway system which allowed them to travel to and from work, and a lot of their workplaces were close to home. Just like in the name Harlem Renaissance, it started off in Harlem, New York. Stated by PBS, Harlem was once dominated by white folk, but quickly, but because of this migration, it quickly became more black populated. Because of this migration, a lot of black artists and musicians and talents came together. And but sadly, due to the segregation and racism stated by Michael Henry Adams, this prevented them from entering white spaces and to share their works to the people. So because of this, they formed their own groups, their own spaces, and created a community. So among these areas settings that they would come together were clubs, cabarets, dance halls, brothels, and gambling houses. Among these places were places where dancers and performers can show off their talents and their works. These also were places where artists and writers and poets can draw in their inspirations. Jamie Marshall was the owner of the Marshall Hotel. This place was a place that um, function the same as all these places, and was a place that many people hanged out in, and was a place of start for a lot of important figures. For visual arts, a lot of starts for these artists were illustrations. So so they would be hired by artists and performers to promote their works. A lot of their art came were inspired by their African connections, and in a way was inspired by caricatures. So as you can see here, in the Before in Paris by Palmer Hayden, you can see one element of the characters were the big lips. Now, they uh, artists um, they didn't really instead of I can't figure out the words. Instead of embracing it, they took ownership of it. So, and this is one way they did it. Um, Among these works, it would show modernism, realism, primitivism, and folk. Mediums included painting, sculpting, drawing, photography. James Van Dierzy, he was a photographer. He captured moments, settings, events, and really captured the vibe of the Harlem Renaissance. Palmer Hayden, he was a artist who in the beginning started off doing low low paying jobs, but inspired by other artists, he began in Harlem and went to Paris and continued his work. In drama, just like in visual arts, there was the blackface, which was a way to, which was another, just like caricatures, dehumanize African Americans. And instead of like the visual artists where they took ownership, they instead combated it. So critics, playwrights, and actors would perform and show Black experiences. And this was a topic where it faced criticism because people were hesitant in entering politics and talking about racism, but Du Bois um, argued that all art is propaganda, which I would agree so, because in art you are expressing yourselves, you're expressing your ideas, and so you're showing messaging. among your works. Harlem, written by Wallace Thurman and William Jordan Rapp, was a film that portrayed the life among Harlem, but specifically the low area of Harlem. So not the high high um, living environment, but instead of low. In writing, I see writers as the history keepers. So they would write about the events happening around them. The autobiography of Ex-Colored Man by James Weldon Johnson specifically talked about the Tenderloin area, and it described the clubs, the dancing, the events that happened around it. And so because of this, we could visualize and understand what was going on during this time. And also, a lot of these writers faced new ideas and art forms, and they took these as inspiration. Culture, these included cultural radicalism, pragmatism, cultural pluralism, socialism, American cultural nationalism, and Pan-Africanism. The civil rights, specifically the NAACP, took this as an opportunity to share their word, their messaging, their their, their cause. Music during this time, blues and jazz was very popular. It created the jazz age. Jazz blossomed during this time. Um, this also created the race records, which basically was black artists creating music for black audiences. Miami Smith's Crazy Blues was 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 very popular and well liked. Among the music industry, there was Alberta Hunter, Clara Smith, Bessie Smith, and Ma Rainey. Um, just like just like the because of these spaces, it allowed people to come together and express themselves, and this includes women. Women through writing were able to talk about views and topics. So Jessie Redmond Faust talked about breaking free from norms. It talked about what she talked about women and independence and choosing what they want rather than allowing others to decide for them. Nella Larson challenged the idea of womanhood. So it talked about one of her stories talked about women deciding how they should um, how they should um, portray to others. So their wear. So like how women should be wearing. What should they wear? LGBTQ, just like women, LGBTQ among these spaces um, were able to express themselves. So, this quote by Michael Henry Adams, he states that one might say it couldn't exist without us, without them, without us. Um, one way the LGBTQ helped the Harlem Renaissance was their gay clubs. Their gay clubs welcomed many people and really embraced the idea of being yourself and expressing yourself. And a lot of these gay clubs were where, just like the hotel, was a place where a lot of artists and people started out. Among the Harlem Renaissance was a resistance towards many things. So coming together, for coming together, a lot of though there was segregation, because what I believe among these artists was due to them, when you prevent an artist from being themselves and sharing their ideas, that instead of it becoming a bubble within them and just disappearing, it instead grows. So, like for example, if a music writer is prevented from showing from playing their music, instead of them stopping, they will continue to make new ideas, and that ideas will build up. And so they are once they enter these spaces, it explodes, and they show their awe, and because of that explosion, it causes attention, and people become attracted to this, and also shows modernism. People African Americans showed that they are modern and that they are not as what characters in the blackface showed, just like and this also combated racism. Just like as stated before, they combated the ideas of racism and blackface. So to wrap it up, the Harlem Renaissance was a event where artists and performers and great talents came together, and they created a space that back then was not possible. This 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 space allowed both blacks and whites to come together and to, in a way, unite. And the Harlem Renaissance also combated and became a resistance in a way to combat the ideas of what Black Americans were portrayed. So it showed that they are modern, they are classy, they are artists, they have talent. So, and that is it.